I want to talk about the cost of lies, and I've stolen that phrase from HBO Chernobyl, which, if you haven't seen, I highly recommend. Not paid, just like it. And this is the scene here, and I guess I'll play a little bit. This fella in the middle, if you haven't seen the show, this is the story of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant disaster and what happened. Now, this fella is Professor Legatsov, and Professor Legatsov was a real human being who was in charge of the cleanup from a scientific perspective. And he is remembered most fondly as the guy who dealt with it, and then when it came to the actual court trial in the Soviet Union, just spilled the beans in front of everyone and was like, yeah, no, this was all caused by our secrecy and cover-ups, and it got everyone killed. And for that, he ended up being followed by the KGB for the rest of his life and committed suicide at the age of 50. So there we are, cheerful Soviet stuff.
Nice, happy story to start us off, isn't it?
But you can see here, I mean, this speech is fantastic. And the speech is the judge warning him, this is a drama, of course, but the judge warning him that he should shut up. And he says in front of his colleagues from the various nuclear institutions of the Soviet Union that the problem was not that, as most people think, the staff were idiots, although that's a factor. It's not that it's communism, although that's a big factor. The big specific problem is that a fault was found with the nuclear reactors, which is that you have a shutdown mechanism. No matter how bad things get, in a nuclear reactor, at least at this time, he explains, you shove in the boron rods all the way, kills the reactivity, turns the power plant off. Bad day if you're trying to make electricity, because now you've got to find somewhere else to make up the lack. But good day if you're trying to avoid blowing up a nuclear reactor.
So you started this segment by saying it was going to be fun. You've talked about the Soviet Union, a suicide, and a nuclear detonation.
I have a different definition of fun. But the problem with the boron rods is you shove them in, all right, everything's solved, you get a bollocking, but you don't blow up the reactor. Now, in the Soviet Union, apparently at the tips of these boron rods, they have graphite. So they pulled the rods all the way out, and then they had to shove them back in to stop it blowing up. But graphite accelerates the reaction. So once the tips got in, accelerates it, pushes the rods, so then they can't go in, and then the whole thing went boom. Now, this fault was found years before, and they just covered it up and never told anyone. So then the high school educated boys who were running Chernobyl didn't know. So even though they were playing around with a safety test and buggering up all kinds of different ways, they thought they could just press the button, solve the whole thing, no actual risk. The exact opposite happened, and Chernobyl is now a death zone, of course. So that's that. And he gives this speech, and there's a line in there that's always stuck with me because it's just good advice. Every lie we tell incurs a debt to the truth. Sooner or later, that debt is settled. So they told a lie. They wanted to cover up that this was a fault of these reactors because they wanted to either make money by selling them abroad or dealing with them in the home country. But that debt was paid by Chernobyl blowing up. For those who are interested, you can go and check out Professor Legatsov's tapes. The ones you see in the end of the series are real, and he recorded them and then hid them from the KGB. So someone got hold of them, and they've done a compilation in English with some footage of Chernobyl as it is now. So there's that. You can go and see Soviet Empire still in dust. But there we are. But the point I tell you all that is that it's just good life advice, really. The cost of lies isn't worth it. Ever. Very, very rarely is it actually worth it. And we have some good examples that just happened to happen in politics over the last few days. First and foremost, AOC. You may remember, back in the Summer of Love, advocating that you should just harass politicians in public whilst they're trying to go to whatever, the diner, the movies, whatever it is. Make their lives horrible. She says here, the thing that critics of activists don't get is that they tried playing the polite language policy game, and all it did is make them easier to ignore. It wasn't until they made folks uncomfortable that there was traction to do anything, even if it wasn't their full demands. And she's talking here about harassing politicians in their daily lives because they won't defund the police. It was an insane policy then, it's an insane policy now, but the way of advocating for that, in her view, is to just literally harass these human beings so they can't live like human beings.
It is also worth mentioning as well that the defunding the policing has been repealed in a lot of places because they realised that with fewer police officers, there was more crime.
Yes, go up.
My goodness, who'd have thought?
Yeah. Okay, a retarded policy, but even, okay, we'll take her at her word. That was a viewpoint. Well, now what happens? Well, she gets harassed everywhere she goes because she won't call what's happening in Gaza a genocide. Let's enjoy this, shall we?
You refuse to call it a genocide in front of everybody.
I need you to understand that this is not.
It's not okay that there's a genocide happening. You're not actively against it.
You're lying.
I'm lying.
You're not.
You went on TV and avoided talking about it.
Because now you can't say it's a genocide or what you're deciding for political race.
Her white boyfriend.
You can't call it a genocide and how do you say we're not
Case of,
lying. We're not lying. You went on TV.
Anti-racist on the streets, colonizer in the sheets.
Calling it a genocide. Don't tell me.
Stop. Okay? Stop. Stop.
We're not doing anything. We're just talking to an elected public official. That's all we're doing. That's it.
Cut it, and you're going to cut this, and you're going to clip this so that it's completely out of context. I already said that it was, and y'all are just going to pretend that it wasn't over and over again. It's fucked up, man. And you're not helping these people, and you're not helping them.
You refuse to.
You're not.
Enjoy your life. I'm
This
sorry.
is so funny. This is so funny because, if she actually said it, why can't she just tell it to that dude and they could just hag themselves?
Mm-hmm.
That's very funny because, as I said also on Twitter, that she gets a taste of her own medicine and you see a leftist issuing an ultimatum on her. She's to the right of Stalin. And that's a big no-no.
And this isn't the only one. We played before. I think we saw the footage where she's getting harassed by New Yorkers who are like, deport them, close the borders, because so many have now come to even these deeply blue areas that they're screwing up their lives. Oh no.
Even New Yorkers are saying deport them.
Hi folks, sorry to interrupt the video, but I wanted to let you know that we've introduced a feature on the website that allows you to purchase individual videos. So if you go over to lotus.com and see a piece of premium content that you really want to watch, you can pay for it and it is yours forever.
Because here's the thing, like
Goodness.
that advice of making politicians uncomfortable. I mean, there's two outcomes of the kind of activists who would engage in that sort of thing. Either the activists are insane, they're just unhinged people who don't see their elected representatives as people and therefore have to be harassed 24/7, or the politicians really are so genuinely, insanely out of touch with their electorate that they can't go anywhere without being, shouted and jeered at. Now, she's in an area that's deeply blue. She's not deeply unpopular with her electorate. Her electorate are dumb, but whatever you can do about it. Instead, you've got insane people here, and live with it. This is the cost of your lie. You will just have to live with people harassing you 24/7 because, oh well. And it's not the only place I found this over the weekend. I don't know if you noticed this. Local man. Oh, before we go on, just wanted to mention there are some lies which are not out of being dishonest. Instead, they're just being stupid. This is a historical example. If you ever wanted to look it up, it is hilarious. This is people protesting the moon landings because, as they say here, $12 a day to feed an astronaut. We could feed a starving child for $8 a day. Wow.
I think the astronaut, I don't know. I think it's serving quite an important role. I mean, the moon landing. I mean,
We can't
unless you're Dan, you think it's a very important thing.
we can't go to space until you feed my kid. This was a real protest movement back in the day of the moon landings, and it's just stupid. Like
Hang on a minute. Well, she is eating all her kids' food. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Very clearly.
Her kid is starving because she's eating her lunch.
And yeah, I mean, this is where you deal with like insane protesters. This is my example here of a one that's not arguable. Some black nationalists who are just like, give me money. Don't go to the moon. I don't know if you've ever heard the song Whitey on the Moon. It's a real song.
I think I have, yeah.
Yeah, it was mad. But anyway, we're not dealing with that. We're dealing with dishonesty mostly. And you'll see this in stuff like this. This Fraser Nelson chap. Brexit was supposed to control immigration, lift pay and lower welfare. Instead, net migration trebled. Man, whoopsie daisies. How could this happen? Oh, sure. Oh, it's a surprise. I mean, someone published this, like, we accidentally trebled net migration by mistake.
Yeah.
Please help us.
How does that happen? It's we were throwing darts at our immigration target board and we accidentally missed.
Yeah, I'm sorry, you're a liar. This was not a mistake. This was not a cock-up. This is something you orchestrated, being the conservative intelligentsia here who are in charge at that point. I say conservative, I mean the party, obviously, not the bloody people. These people aren't actually right-wing in the slightest.
Socialists at this point.
Yeah. But I found that wages point kind of interesting. So I thought I'd bore you with some numbers. So pulled out this. This is the ONS data for national earnings. And if you scroll down, eventually there's some bloody graph. where you can find how much average earnings were for full-time workers in these time periods. You're going to have to take my word for it. So in 2019, full-time median pay was £2,340.80 per month. 2019. All right. And in 2023, the full-time median pay is £2,726.80 a month, an increase of 16%. In the same time period, inflation was 33.5%.
So it's a real terms pay cut then?
Yes. So since we left the European Union, that being January 2019, where it finally went into effect, there has been a minus 17.5% real term pay increase. It's minus 17%, a cut of 17%. Right. Now, I don't know about you. I'm a little bit miffed.
Yeah, I'm incredibly resentful. I know I'm smiling because
I'm on camera.
Yes. But when I go off camera, I'm going to be miserable.
And
you can vouch for that, you know?
Definitely can. And yeah, no, I just can't help but feel that maybe importing literally millions and millions of people, trebling the migration that was already suppressing wages, might have contributed to this quite a bit. And I mean, we're not the only ones. I mean, the Americans have got their own problems as well. I looked up, this is Department of Labor statistics, and ran these through. So you run the inflation of that period for 2019 or whatever is 19.2%. So they end up with a 1.8% real term wage increase according to these numbers, which are probably a bit fudged. Let's be honest.
But I think
because there's been more inflation than that in the US.
I've run some numbers as well, just in a separate thing, and the Americans seem to be faring a lot better than us, even more so than before all of the money printing and massive inflation.
I mean, there's a perk to being the global superpower, but one of the provinces, that island over there, is doing worse, a lot worse in these terms. But moving on, because there's that. That's the cost, right, of everything that's gone on. So a lot of people in the UK have started to notice, damn, I seem to not get much pay rises, and all that tax I pay seems to be going to foreigners. I don't know if I like this. This is pretty bad. I keep going on the ONS, and they keep telling me these statistics that confirm that. So you know what they're doing?
They're getting rid of them, aren't they?
They're banning them. Just moving on from that. So here we are. Here's the news. News today, the British government has made a deliberate ideological decision to stop publishing data about welfare claimants and tax contributions by nationality. What's the reason? Well, they quote it. We fear its use by xenophobic politicians and the media to portray those who are economically active as scroungers.
Well, they're not economically active if they're a scrounger, so that's already a stupid statement.
Written by an illiterate person.
Yeah.
Economically inactive are scroungers would be the right way. They go on saying there, they would be a focus for xenophobic political and media reporting and would more likely to lead to a debate being skewed rather than informed. Yes. So to inform the debate, we won't publish the data.
I've always found that less information is always good, you know? When you have less information, it tends to make the argument more informed.
Yeah, obvious lie. Like, obviously, the government is just now hiding the data because people like us, obviously, keep showing you graphs like this because they published it. Remember this? Remember my favorite map? Because it's just a big old map where you can go all the way down to like the house you live in and the neighborhood next to you and find out literally what ethnic group of the people in that neighborhood. Are they economically active? What's their health like? It's brilliant, the level of data.
You're like the supreme nosy neighbor here, aren't you? You're finding out everything about everyone.
But the great thing is that you can then use this to find out what's happening in your country. That's what is useful about data, actually.
It's the whole point of the census, yeah.
Informs you about the world. And I'm going to pick an ethnic group at random, my favorite, Pakistanis. And as you can see here, Pakistanis don't really exist in much of the country. They're not really a thing. But in these dark blue areas like Birmingham, they are. So let's give a good old scroll, shall we? Let's have a look-see, boys. See where the Pakistanis are in Birmingham. Just having a look. There we are. There's a little graph, as you can see. So there's, as you go down, this area is like 50-odd% Pakistani. 60. Yeah, gets up there. And then the other parts aren't. Okay? We all got that in our minds. Now, doing the ONS's job for them because they won't publish it, they also have here economically active people. And as you can see, the dark areas, there's more people who have jobs. As high as 67% of people in this area have jobs. Let's go to Birmingham, shall we? Have a look-see. And just give it a scroll. Now, Birmingham's not very workaholic for some reason.
Great.
That's
Great
true.
turn of phrase. They're not very workaholic.
And then you
Do
get
you
in.
English?
Do they have a job? Well, these places have a job here, as you can see. 75% of people in these areas have jobs. And in these areas, a lot less than the
Blimey,
average.
that's less than half of people are working. Obviously, some of those people are presumably children.
No. So
No?
this is over 16.
Okay.
So this is all working age people. And,
Okay.
in these areas, it's only half, or less than half, have a job. Now, the areas around it, it's higher. It gets to 60% around here. Getting around. Do you guys notice a pattern? I'm just gonna play spot the difference. Is anyone spotting any differences?
Yes, it seems like there's a pretty large overlap between Pakistanis and sitting on their backsides.
Well, at least in Birmingham, that's the ONS for you. Can't believe they would publish.
Maybe
such.
there's just something about Birmingham that makes Pakistanis particularly lazy.
Who knows? Who knows? But anyway, let's scroll back out a minute before we get there. Because remember, I mean, that's not the only place. There could be bias. So let's move on up here. Let's go to this area next to Leeds, which is a beautiful British city.
Oh, this is Bradford.
Bradford, my favourite, number 2 city in England.
Yes, the Pakistani community here, very hardworking at grooming gangs.
Gets as high as 80% there in that particular area of Bradford. Right, okay, so we've all seen that, right? Now we're going in. We're going in, boys. Now brace yourselves. There's Bradford. Oh, there we are. For some reason around these areas, 50-odd% of people are working, 50-odd aren't. Now, let's play spot the difference again, shall we?
They look like they're the same, Callum.
Yeah.
There's no difference here.
Now, I'm not just picking on Pakistanis. I have plenty of people to pick on, don't worry.
I've got a diverse array of people to pick on.
But my point being, they are the particular favourite of this investigation because they're one of the most stark differences. And this is the reason the ONS have said they're never publishing anything like this map again, because I keep using it. And,
they're targeting you. This is anti-Callum hatred, everyone. So everyone write to the ONS and say Callum is being discriminated against.
How else am I going to make segments if I don't have access to literally all the data in the world down to the neighbourhood that you live in?
For £5 a month, you can sponsor Callum and give him access to maps.
Quick call, if there's anyone out there who can archive this piece of technology, do it and let me know, because I am scared they're going to delete this piece of technology. But the reason I mention all this is because, well, it keeps happening. So you can find this in your daily life. So you know when you read a Daily Mail article about some scrounger who's a foreigner, has 10 kids and 3 houses and blah, blah. You know this story.
That's shortly before I throw my phone across the room, yeah.
Yeah, but they're pretty rare. They're usually the most extreme people who are basically committing fraud. But then you get them boasting on TikTok. So let's listen to this lady boast about it.
So I'm just on my way to the job centre, right? And I just wanted to say a quick thank you to everyone who pays their taxes, because without you, I wouldn't be where I am today. Like the fact that I can still go out about my day and still do my things and get paid for not doing absolutely anything because of others who are working and paying their taxes. I don't think I've ever said thank you. So genuinely speaking, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much. And keep up the good work.
I hate her so much. Callum, you know I'm not a big fan of people, freeloaders.
Or taxes.
Or taxes. And this is the perfect combination of both of those things, and Muslims. This trinity of things I hate all coming together in a horrific, condescending medley here.
But this person here is stealing. I mean, they're admitting, like, well, I get to live a free life because you guys got to work and pay for me. Okay. Well, where does this all come back into the lies? Well, obviously the ONS are lying. They're saying that they're not going to let this data be published because it will cause xenophobia. Really? Why would that be? Because if it's not true, it wouldn't cause xenophobia, because I'd autistically look at your map and your data and I'd come out of it and be like, no, it's the work-shy British who aren't doing the jobs. I'd be accurate about it. In fact, we have some data, don't we? So here's an article. State support. Okay? So this is probably the last ever publishing of this information that we're ever going to get, because they said they're not going to anymore. So this is data on which ethnic groups are getting which kind of benefits and what percentage. And as you see, most journalists, those lazy work-shy bastards, will come on here and they'll read this, which is the white families, 51%, were the most likely to receive non-income related benefits, such as a state pension. Done with my job, I'm going home.
Per capita.
Yeah, it's a difficult concept. Now, of course, what we can do is just scroll down, because, of course, there's data here. So this is people getting benefits of any type. And as you can see, it's pretty broad. These are percentages of households. So this isn't per capita. This is just percentage of the households that exist. So it's all up and down. That's interesting. But then when you get digging, it's pretty weird, to say the least. Because again, here's the any amount of state support. And as mentioned, white British, right at the top there. 54% of British households who are white British are getting some kind of state support. The Europeans, so the white section, 53%, then Bangladeshis at 52%, so on and so forth. And then the Chinese are too busy at work. So there we are.
It's funny how in all statistics, the Chinese always come out the best. Like crime, they're the lowest on crime, lowest on welfare. You know, we're not worthy, basically.
Sincerely, we've got the good Chinese, the Hong Kongers and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
So as you can see here, John's just like based. But it goes down, and there's some data and more and more and more. And keep scrolling, my boys, because you're going to find something that made me I almost got postal this morning. Which is child benefit. Right, okay, let's take a look at that. Child benefit, which the group's getting all that. So that's Bangladeshi, Pakistani, Black, Asian, Asian other, then Europeans, then other, then mixed, then Indian. Right at the bottom here, you've got the Chinese and the white British. They're not the ones having kids. So we, as the British state, we, in that sense, are paying for Bangladeshi and Pakistanis to have kids. And then who's getting the state pensions? Well, that's the white British. So that's why the white British are getting so much, is because they're literally dying out of old age. That's them. So what does the British welfare state do? Well, it doesn't give money to white British families to have kids, okay? What about disabled white British? For some reason, the Bangladeshis are the most disabled. Don't know why that works. All right.
I imagine you're probably going to veto what I'm going to say.
I will.
Oh.
Because
I gave you the option.
But then it goes on, because then we get the next one, the next section here. Council tax reduction. So the groups that get council tax reduction, so this is property taxes for Americans. Black, Bangladeshi, other, mixed, Pakistani, and then white British there. Right at the bottom, again, Indians and Chinese, just too busy at work. Who are we giving free houses to? Housing benefit? Let's have a look. Black, Bangladeshi, other, mixed, Asian, other, Pakistani, then white British. Okay. Okie dokie. And then income support. Don't even know what that is. Black, Pakistani, Bangladeshi. Right. Right-yo. That's the cost of the lies, is it? That's why you're lying. That's why you're saying we won't publish this data in future. Because literally the cost is in pounds.
Yeah,
billions of pounds.
It's favouring anyone but the native British population, isn't it, really? And the Chinese as well.
Yeah, the Chinese, Indians are the foreign ethnic groups that are too busy working. And then there are groups that aren't. And then the white British, yeah, they need reforming. You know, do what you can to make people be successful, build wealth, etc., rather than relying on the state. But at least they're natives. So if they're assholes, you've got to deal with them. You can't deport them.
Yeah, they are our own problem, as opposed to people who we've imported in, who we shouldn't be dealing with in the first place.
If we could send them all to Pakistan, they're on the cards, but the Pakistanis won't take them. So there we are. But I have archived this. So this is the archived version for all you people who wish to read data in future beyond the state's prying eyes. But yeah, that's the cost of lies. Not only is it in human and civilizational terms like AOC and the lying from Nelson Fraser, pounds, lots and lots of pounds is what the lies are costing us every single day. If you appreciated that episode from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, you can go to lotuseaters.com to get access to all the premium content that's on the site, such as the Epoch series, this episode on Leonardo. If you'd like to find out what else is being put out, you can follow on Twitter at lotuseaters_com on Twitter. Thank you and goodbye.